Hey folks, welcome to another episode of Infused, brought to you by The Sales Joint, the premier sales connection for cannabis cultivators and dispensaries. Visit thesalesjoint.com for more info. I'm Nick, and guys, I'm thrilled to be here today along with Francesca.
Hi, everyone.
As well as Mike. Mike, how you doing today?
Doing good, Nick. Hello, Francesca. Hope everybody's in a good place today. We got a big topic to talk about. I'm pumped.
Huge topic. I'm pumped too.
It's like we have to fold it in half to actually consume it.
Yeah,
a lot to unpack.
Oh, there's a lot to unpack. Guys, we're in the beautiful month of October and we're falling into the autumn season. And when this episode debuts, by the way, it will be the debut day of a film called The Many Saints of Newark. Not Newark, which is where we're coming to you from, Newark, Delaware, but Newark. And I'm thrilled to return to that Sopranos world that David Chase created, that world that exists in the landscape of North Jersey, New York, and the passion and drama that follows that area. Guys, today we're talking about two beautiful states filled with beautiful people, interesting characters, wonderful culture, and now the two most intriguing cannabis markets here on the Beast Coast. When these two states went rec legal, guys, a lot of it had to do with the will of the people, right? Cannabis on the ballot, does that tell you when we see markets like this turn over, Francesca? Does this tell you that we're kind of, this work we're doing to end the stigma, is it working in your opinion?
It absolutely is working. You see not just like a slight majority approval of cannabis use, cannabis industry growth, but a vast majority of Americans approve of legalization efforts, as well as, I think, have dropped the preconceived notions they used to have about consumption and the people that do it.
Mike, as far as New York and New Jersey are concerned, did one or the other surprise you that they went rec legal?
I think in terms of New York and New Jersey, neither one surprised me that they went legal. I mean, if you look at just the population density in just the North Jersey, New York area alone, and the amount of tourists and amount of people going up and down I-95 through New Jersey, it's, to me, a no-brainer that both of these states would eventually flip the switch. And I think it took a little longer than I thought it would. But I think the success of Massachusetts really paved the way for both of these states to say, oh, this is going to work out. And look at this, look at the revenue that is generated, and it's being done safely and responsibly. And, we can use that as a somewhat of a model, or at least a feel good to know that it can be done on the East Coast with the East Coast demographic.
What's also not surprising is that they did it at the same time. Those two states are super fucking competitive.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if, go ahead, Mike.
No, I was just going to say it was almost like a race.
Oh, totally.
And they were pulling each other's shirts and everything else, trying to get to the finish line. And it was like a photo finish to see who was going to get there first. But at the end of the day, and this is something I feel like happens all the time, they'll go and they'll pass things. And then the common, like, kind of consumer that's out there, they think immediately like, oh, it passed on January 1st. So that means January 2nd, I can go and buy something. And there's always that inherent lag between, it passing and actually stores opening and product on the shelves ready for a rec state. And I ran into Nick knows this over the summer. Like, some of my good friends were driving through Virginia, which just recently passed. And they were like, hey, what's the best store to stop at? And I'm like, none, because it's not ready yet. I mean, like, so it's just that inherent thing.
No, it certainly is. And I'm glad you brought that up. I'm glad you mentioned Massachusetts. And I'm glad you mentioned this idea of, hey, we went rec legal, and you want to march right to the store that day because the store doesn't exist. And one of the things we're really going to be focusing on today is we started out talking about the popularity of cannabis with voters and the work of educators and people doing the advocacy, big work. It seems to be working, but there's a huge, or I should say, there's a fundamental difference between saying you're going rec legal and then actually implementing that system and coming up with one that works. So today we're going to be looking at that pretty closely. You mentioned that you weren't surprised by the two markets turning that quickly, Francesca, and I think that anyone who's listening to us who isn't from the East Coast might not know how competitive those two states are as far as just about everything. Who's got the better pizza? Is it Bruce or is it Billy Joel? Are the Giants from New York or are they from Jersey where they actually play? These two demographics will fight over anything. I think they'll even fight over who has the better traffic. Mm-hmm. But as far as who has the best system in place for weed, let's get going, guys. Let's talk about what we see in the market. Let's start with the Empire State, New York. We're excited. We're going to be going to New York really soon. In the first weekend in November, we're heading up to the CWCB Expo.
Woo-hoo. Yay!
At the
trade show in a while.
At the Javits Center, Francesca, it's the first trade show, but this is one that people have been waiting for. And they've been waiting for it before these two markets went rec legal.
Right.
When we went to our last CWCB Expo in New York, was it just me or did it seem like the presence of weed was everywhere in Lower Manhattan?
It wasn't just you. It was everywhere. I can't remember if decriminalization had happened then I think it just happened. So that's the thing is like now you can go up to New York and I feel like cannabis is way as prevalent, if not more prevalent than tobacco use because you can legally consume it anywhere you can consume tobacco pretty much. So having it, smoking it, or I should say consuming it, none of that is illegal in New York. It's just the buying and selling of it. And so you have some loopholes to get around.
You definitely have loopholes to get around. We definitely have reform that needs to happen. As it stands, adults who are 21 and over can possess up to 3 ounces of flour or 24 grams of concentrates if you want to have a really interesting night. But like you said, we can't really buy it anywhere. There's no storefronts. You look up the registered medical patients in New York State, we have over 150,000 registered patients, but we don't have anywhere to buy weed. The current system that they have is in need of reform, and they're trying, but they're just a little bit slower than their friends over in Jersey. So for those of us that don't know in the audience, Francesca, their current system involves one of vertical integration in New York State. Could you briefly explain what that is?
Yeah, vertical integration is controversial to save my opinion for the end. I'll try. Basically what it is, it's a kind of licensing that a producer can hold. And essentially it's saying that you, as the license holder, are all 3 steps of the cannabis producing and sales process. So you are the grower, you are the processor, you are the dispensary. So it keeps everything in one place. And there's certainly benefits to that, I'm sure, for certain people. And the downside is that tends to be incredibly that insulation comes at a price, and it's usually a price that craft cannabis cannot pay. It also greatly limits variety, and variety is going to be an important aspect for consumers and patients to have choices when they are in the store about what works best for them, regardless of what their goals are. So I find vertical integration to be a bad thing, quite frankly. I think it's on the whole, I think it really excludes people. I think it's pricey, elitist, a way to make sure cronyism is protected more than social equity, more than fair market, more than, free market, I should say. So I have my, and it also just kind of, the more you keep things that power centralized, you're just asking for the kind of corruption or monopolization that we don't need in cannabis.
Mike, you make decisions about where the sales joint is going to jump and where we've sold and worked with growers in the past. When you look at current New York law, it says New York requires vertical integration. Why do you think states do it? And in your opinion, if you could follow Francesca, good thing, bad thing for the industry?
I think I've thought about this as we look at different states, and a number of them are vertically integrated. And I understand. I think the reason they do it is because it's the easy way to get in the game and to be in the cannabis game for them without losing control. So it's like the horse is out of the barn, but it's just in a small stable, like in a small fenced in area now, instead of having the whole range to run crazy on and other horses coming in and other sheep and all kinds of other stuff going on that they can no longer control. So I absolutely think it's a way to be in the cannabis game, but still maintain a high level of control and a high level of regulation. And I totally agree with Francesca in that I think it's a way for them to reward or award licenses to those who have potentially contributed to their campaign. And who knows? I mean, but when you have a very limited exclusive group of people who are getting these licenses, you can't not wonder if that plays into it. So I think that weighs into a vertical one. But I think that the overarching theme to me is control by the government.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good point, Mike. It is probably the easiest way to start a legalized market in a controlled kind of experiment way.
Right.
That's a really good point. So like the benefits, that's like the benefit that they can put on the face of it, and then the benefits on the back end are way shadier. Right.
But Francesca, I would say this: I don't necessarily agree that variety suffers in a vertical state.
Interesting.
I mean, look at Maryland. Maryland is a vertical medical state, and I think they have good variety in terms of brands, product types. You know, Delaware is a state that's terrible. I mean, the variety in Delaware is garbage.
Hey.
It is. I mean,
it absolutely
so
is.
Delaware is a vertical state with 3 licenses, basically. And so it's not good.
That's one for each county. How dare you?
But I don't know if I would make a blanket statement that variety suffers, because I think Maryland's a good example of where variety is still strong. Is it as good as open market states? Probably not, but I think Maryland is if I just compare Maryland to Delaware or Maryland to Massachusetts, has good variety, and that's a vertical state.
I think by good variety, it's a tough qualifier, because we're not saying what good and the level of variety is, because sure, there is variety, and you're right, Maryland is a good example of a vertically integrated state. They seem like they've got their stuff together and are doing well and doing it right. At the same time, like, the vertically integrated licenses means that usually deep pockets or heavily backed people are the only ones that can afford such a valuable license. It means there are fewer growers doing fewer things, taking fewer chances, and less weed just going everywhere, because you're going to keep a majority of it in your own store and only sell a little bit of it to other stores, so your reach is less. So I just think the limits on variety definitely do damage to patients in terms of options and free market kind of commerce.
And I think Nick, the second part of your question was around do I think it's good or bad? And I'm of the mindset that open market is where it's, to me, the most fair, equitable way for everyone to be able to participate in the industry. So I'm not a fan of vertical, because I think it is very limiting. I think it calls into a lot of questions, just the whole structure and things like that. And so I'm not a big fan of it. I think I understand why, but I'm not a proponent of the vertical markets from the supply side that we've been talking about, but also even just from like what we do from the ancillary business side. It's to me, the sales joint will never be in a vertical state. There's not a need for our services, because they basically sell to themselves. So they don't need help selling to other people. So, I think there's inherent flaws in a vertical state. But I also understand why everybody wants to put a toe in the water before they jump in.
Oh, we're gonna return to that. I appreciate you going back to the other part of the question. When I kind of jump around and I try to get into the subject a little bit, a great place to go that I look in sometimes, and I know Francesca does, is chat rooms. And if you look in this, there's a tendency that every time we get a win, if it's legislative for cannabis, there's always and then you're gonna go to the dispensary, like wait a minute. There's nowhere to go. And I thought that one of the coolest things I read with some of these people in the New York cannabis community is said, under the old system, not only was it restrictive in terms of variety, like we just talked about with producers, but they said it was just restrictive as hell for dispensaries as well. where you might have a great team of people that know their flower, that know their medicine, that know their cannabis, but don't have that opportunity to open a small independent store under that system because they can't afford that license. They're not a producer. It's crazy. So I just had this idea in my head that if the old system continued, well, we just have a very much a Times Square variety of cannabis.
Yep. It's Bubba Gump, Red Lobster cannabis. And that's kind of what you're going for. And yeah, you're right, Nick. Vertical licensing kind of pisses me off too, because it's like, what if I'm just interested in one part of the business? What if I really want to have a dispensary? I don't want to mess with processing and growing. It's like, I got to get all these people that know things I don't and blah, blah, blah. That's just a pain.
Yeah,
I don't like a group project like that.
In a lot of ways, Frank, that's a good point, Francesca, because it does add more risk to the overall corporation, the enterprise, let's call it, because nobody knows everything about every part of the supply chain from seed to sale, right? So you have to start bringing in other people, and now what if one of them is a fraud or a weak link? Because there's none of them in cannabis, right? So it adds risk, and multi-million dollar, tens of millions of dollars of risk, and not even talking about the retail space and the growth space and all the other like real estate investment. So it's a lot of dollars involved, combined with a lot of risk when you start having to be vertically team integrated as well.
Yeah, it's almost kind of like the streaming platforms of like, now Disney owns all of these things, and so it's like that's like a vertical license on media.
Wow,
it's
what an analogy.
World.
Somebody did their prep work.
I did. That just came to me. I'm really proud
Bullshit.
of that. I swear.
But
hold on. I wanted to go back to one thing that Francesca said that I thought was interesting. You said about Bubba Gump, brands and stuff like that. And a vertical market does, to me, pretty much lock you in to just be a corporate weed market.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think as I was thinking about this stuff ahead of time, one of the things that I thought of was, if we think about where we work a lot of times in some of the original traditional states out west, there's a big reverence for the craft growers because they've been here for decades doing this. And even the consumers have a preference in many ways for craft grow, right? Mm-hmm. And just kind of in a lot of ways despise corporate weed. I wonder if that's going to be the same on the East Coast. Because not just because the market dynamic, the vertical stuff, but just the consumer demographic differences between New York, New Jersey, and all. Yeah. Like I'm just sitting here wondering, like maybe people in New York City will prefer, like cookies and want to go to Planet 13, want to have a very like lavish consumer experience and buy only the brands that are out there, the Tyson Farms, the Rapper brands, and all the other stuff like that. Like that might be the big hit. Like we don't know.
Totally.
All right,
Mike.
Let's let the puck dangle here for a second. That is an incredible point because, truth be told, the first time I was in a major city where cannabis was legal, I went into a corporate dispensary. And I'm pretty damn sure I got my corporate weed. I was just excited that coming from Delaware, who we've already trashed in the show, coming from Delaware, I can walk into a store, show my ID, talk to a bud tender, and get my legal weed. So I think Mike's onto something here. Look at the tourist traffic in Manhattan, Francesca. Do you think that New Yorkers are going to give a damn?
New Yorkers or New York tourists? Because I think there's a big difference. I do.
There's a big difference.
You got me.
Yeah. So I think New York's medical marijuana program right now is, if they carried that into the rec market, you are asking for bottlenecking like nobody's business. I mean, it would be set up to fail. It really would. And maybe, I don't know what they were thinking with that medical market. Maybe that is just the toe in the water, like Mike, mentioned, but certainly doing it like that for rec, big mistake, huge.
Thank you, Kelly Kapoor.
You're welcome.
No, it did seem like that, but in that alternate reality, I can see the Times Square with the big cookies store.
100%. Oh yeah.
And and the big Planet 13 raking in money.
Yep.
Huge.
Raking.
Yes. Mhm.
Raking in money. That's interesting. The good thing is a lot has happened since we even conceptualized doing an episode about New York and New Jersey. We know that reform's on the way. We know that they have to do the work to get going. They've got to set up new regulations. They've got to launch the retail market that doesn't exist while there's all this enthusiasm behind it. So New Yorkers have a new governor, Governor Kathy Hochul, and she appears to be absolutely committed to expediting cannabis legalization and, more importantly, getting that retail market established. How do we know? She's filling positions that the former guy, we're not even going to talk about why he's not there. I think he blamed being Italian at the end of it, which I was a little
Because that's really hard to be in New York. My God.
well,
Stacked odds.
but we see, they took a shot. They thought he was slow walking his appointments at really important positions, and that's politics at its most infuriating. But we know she's focused on the Cannabis Control Board. We know she's focused on the Office of Cannabis Management. They just created a new licensing category so farmers can get up and growing to meet the insane demand that's going to be there within that market. So there's a lot to be hopeful for, guys. We're talking 60,000 jobs. We're talking a possible $3.5 billion in economic activity directly attributed to cannabis once a program is implemented. So I wanted to end off our New York portion right there, just saying we're going to confirm the regulators up there. We're going to get the system in place, which is critical. And it's pretty cool to see people of color and women leading the charge there, Mike.
Totally agree. And, being a governor is like running a company in a lot of ways. Like you have to look at where you're going to, jobs, where's revenue going to come from. And it's awesome that she's doing what she's doing so quickly after she took over.
Yeah.
But like, what else is on her radar that can produce this many jobs and this much new revenue in a short period of time? So it's like, hey, great job. Congratulations on that. And it's just a real head scratcher why the former governor didn't do it. And I think it's because he was spending so much time trying to cover up all his ass grabbing and not doing his actual job,
Yeah.
And so there's no other, I can't figure out why else it didn't get handled a year ago.
I have an idea. I wonder if he got to rest on his laurels of he legalized it, or because he was in power, right? Or
Yes.
no? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if he got the kudos, that's all these guys want. So now she doesn't
Bingo.
have those kudos. So she's actually got to make it happen to get
Yeah.
her stripes. Or
Well,
her,
he was sharing. He didn't want to take all the kudos.
yeah. He seems like a real sharing guy.
But it seems like that, though, because it's like a lot of them just hang their hat on the goddamn win.
Yes.
But then
the headline.
Yes, then the real work comes and nobody wants to do it. It's almost like, well,
Shocking.
Yeah. And the other part of that, let's be freaking honest here. There's plenty of weed in New York already. There's plenty of weed in New York already. You talk to any busboy and any waiter, you're going to find out where you can get some weed.
Look, that Italian man might not want to upset other key Italian men, if you know what I'm talking about. By
You talking about
their
that
black
thing?
market?
You talking about that thing downtown?
That thing that the guy thought he saw? He
Yeah,
didn't see it.
There we are. Guys, with that little mob reference, that brings us to a little shift here in our tour of the East Coast Corridor, all the way to the Garden State of New Jersey, the home state of a certain guy I know who is the pride of Morris County, the pride of Randolph Township, my man, producer Frankie Fifth Year. The Garden State was on his radar because I know he's a proud Jersey guy, but it was also on your radars too. Francesca, you and I had a guest on this program a little while ago. You remember our amazing talk with Alex from C1D1 Labs?
Of course. Yeah. Love him.
Do you remember how excited he was about Jersey jumping into the game and why?
Yes, I do.
Why was it?
It was, now I hope I do. Now I'm getting quizzed. I'm worried.
Yeah.
I
Set up.
think it was from my memory. It's because Jersey has great grows. Like I'm part of Jersey. Delaware sometimes adopts it, sometimes rejects it. Great. They have like killer tomatoes, killer corn. The farming in Jersey has a national kind of brand or reputation for high quality. So if you apply that to cannabis, we are expecting some premium ganja.
Yeah, yeah, and his exact words were, and just in the brilliant, humble style of Alex, he just said, "Hey, man, if their weed's as good as their tomatoes, I'm all in."
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was solid.
Which is, to your point, Francesca, we're unleashing the power, the promise, the potential of the Garden State and its army of cultivators. There was an incredible amount of optimism surrounding this state and the cannabis community in the area. And then we had this little thing as they're getting the regulations in place, Mike. They were all eyes were on this August 22nd deadline, where we look at the amount of municipalities in Jersey, and they had until it was August 22nd to either opt in to cannabis businessing or to opt out of the cannabis game. Mike, New Jersey has 565 municipalities in the state, 400 of which said, we're not going. We're not going to be in cannabis, at least not right now. Mike, were you surprised by those numbers?
I was not surprised at the New Jersey opt-in numbers because for two reasons. Number one is it's still kind of new. And I think anything new, there's a warm-up period. And so when I think about New Jersey, I think about legislators and what's their two focal points. One is they appease their constituents, and two, they try to get reelected. So, which goes back to number one. So, there's a lot of people in New Jersey that may be a little uneasy about it and this and that. And so the last thing somebody's going to do is put their future job in jeopardy by forcing a yes on the opt-in. So I think that's always going to be the case in many situations. The opt-in, opt-out situation, the structure that was odd too. In terms of if you opt in, you're basically handcuffed to it for 3 years?
Yeah, you're locked.
And so that's risky. And so when you're talking about risk management, if you're talking about setting up a new operation, being locked in for 3 years is something that would make me think twice too. So, I think there's a couple of things there that skew the data, but when I look at the data, I don't look at how that 400 opted out. I look at 165 opted in, and I look at the location of that 165, and it's representing throughout the state. There's representation, if you look at the municipalities that are in on a color map or something like that, it's throughout the state. Obviously, it's North Jersey was real active with that, since they're so close to New York City and New York's tourists and all the I-95 traffic coming up and down the East Coast. I think it's a great representation. My big surprise in the whole thing was that more of the Jersey Shore didn't get involved, with the exception of North Shore and then down Atlantic City. But I think it's because it's so seasonal. And if you look at a lot of tourism is 3 months a year, and then it kind of quiets down for the other 9 months. So I think that's why Jersey Shore kind of shied away from it maybe at this point. Maybe a lot of older full-time residents that were involved in that vote too. But I think overall, I look at the 165 as a big win.
That's a good focus, because I think the cannabis community in general, there's a tendency to look at something, and we live in a clickbait kind of headline culture. And all those, there are a lot of headlines from different news sources that said 71% said, no, we don't want any parts of cannabis. Francesca, you used to be in the education game. 71%. That's not a score you want on a paper on an exam, is it?
No, it's well, I wouldn't. I know that. It's not. It surprised me, honestly, that many opted out until I looked into it a little bit more. And I was like, if you, the not being able to opt back out once you opt in is definitely a major barrier to entry. I don't know why they did that. And you can opt in later. Opting out now doesn't mean opting out forever. So of course, if you're risk averse, like Mike said, that's what you're going to do, and be like, all right, when I'm ready, I'll get in the game because I can. Not if this doesn't go well, I'm getting out because I can. They really set that up for this 71% opt out. I also think municipalities, they have to look at things like, how are they going to handle their ordinances and their zoning laws and things like that? And so they're like, okay, let's just opt out until we have that under control. Then we'll be in. But it is interesting to me that I guess it is kind of like being the first to a party. You don't want to be early to a party. You don't want to be the first. But I hope that the ones that did take that risk and that said yes because they listened to the voters, because even in those municipalities where they say that they're opting out, the vast majority, it's usually like 67% of them are saying,
Yeah.
like, we said yes to this. What's going on?
Mhm.
So
So where are they going to buy their product?
right,
And
they're
the
going to
other
go.
165.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's really, I hope that those early in adopters get rewarded for the risk that they're taking and the guts that they have, as long as they're doing things right.
As long as we're doing things right. And I'll tell you who's done a lot right. The educators and the advocates in the state of New Jersey, working closely to just hound lawmakers with fact over fiction when it comes to cannabis. And there's a lot of good work that was done that I don't want anyone in the Northeast to admonish, simply because that number is, I want to say it's just a little misleading, because
It
Francesca,
is,
you know,
yeah. Like you said,
Yep.
it's clickbait, it's headline. And I've even seen it put as over 70%. Like what 71 is technically over 70%. That's such a terrible way to
Awful.
manipulate the facts, you know?
awful manipulation. And look, I think there's other good things that we look at New Jersey and say, wow, they really do have their stuff together. Look, I don't know if you guys are keeping tabs on this, but as I think it was September 9th, the seventh city in that state, where they're in an area that opted in, has plans for public consumption lounges.
Mhm.
They've got good big money towns along the Amtrak corridor too, like Elizabeth, Trenton, Hoboken.
Gold mine.
Gold mine.
Yeah.
Gold mine. So in that sense, Mike, use our state, if you will, in comparison. Do you think Jersey's going to be one of these places where we look at it as the canary in the cannabis coal mine? This opt-in, opt-out feature might be really good for other states to take a look at, because I couldn't see Delaware going, 60% or something, places supporting it. Do you think Jersey's got a good model for other people to follow?
I think Jersey's model is another step forward in the evolution of the models.
Well
And
said.
so,
Well
and so I
said.
think
Well
that
said.
because everybody's learning from each other, and they're all trying to do things better to make a smoother transition, both from the consumer side, from the legal side, regulatory compliance. They're trying to all make it so that it's smooth and less hiccups. And I think New Jersey's has put together a pretty interesting way of doing it, with the exception of the home grow
Thank you.
stipulation.
Yeah.
I think they have something that's it might be a good template for other people, but I imagine it will get tweaked, but I feel like it's getting to be a sharper knife in the drawer.
Ooh, very. I love everything about that response. What do you agree, Francesca?
100%. I can't build on that because that was just chef's kiss. Perfect.
I like having the sharper knife in the drawer, because it seems to me that this one is adaptable, it's flexible, and it has the ability to change over time, and that they're keeping social equity and public safety at the forefront
Prominent.
of everything they're doing. So that I that was a big point today. That there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and Jersey's doing it, and I think that that's just incredible. And look, they've got great stuff to build on. You look at September 15th, they had their 23rd dispensary opened. Chains like Curaleaf are already there, operating dispensaries under their old medical policy. They had 22 stores. Do you think the presence of chains like that are good for the average consumer, or just maybe the average concerned public citizen, Francesca, to say, here's a store, here's just a regular place? This normalizes it?
Yeah, I think the presence of dispensaries, and especially any brand that becomes recognizable in cannabis, is going to help with the normalization of it. So you can't hate that. Do I wish that some other kinds of people were benefiting and behind those names? Of course. Yeah, naturally. But I do think that there's a huge difference in the public opinion of cannabis because they're getting used to seeing these. They're not back alley doors. They're not shady out of the trunk or in a trench coat kind of deals. It's out in the open. It's an operational business, and it's operating as a business, which we want to see more craft cannabis do a better job of. So there are things about corporate weed that we need to make sure that we recognize as either positive influentially or positive operationally, and then take those and apply them so that others can benefit from what they're doing right. Yeah, and Jersey is so interesting. The no home grow, though, I'm starting to see that more and more with the legalization. I'm not a fan at all. That is wrong. I don't like it. But even I was just thinking about this in the banned areas. They have to allow delivery services.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. And I think that might do a lot to help with whatever stigmas may still exist in those banned municipalities. As soon as you see maybe the deliveries and you see who's getting it, and it starts to be out in the open a little more normalized, boom, now maybe municipalities are going to be more eager to opt in.
Give it 1 or 2 quarters when the first reports come out about how much revenue those municipalities are making as a result of being part of the first 160, then see what happens.
Absolutely. And again, going back to the flexibility of this program, it was great that the one cannabis business, they can't totally restrict the delivery services. So thank you for bringing that up, Francesca. That's going to do a world of good. All right, guys, I'm going to give you some house money to play with.
Ooh.
Right.
Mike.
Going to AC?
House money, baby. I want you to jump into one of the 2 markets. Which one would you be more apt to invest in?
How much money are you giving me? Enough money to get one of the licenses in New York?
So New York.
No, I mean, honestly, I think I'm a free market business person. So to me, New Jersey would be where I would choose to make my career in the plop of business, because I think that would it just allows for fair competition, and competition doesn't scare me. It's like, it's either you are good at what you do or you get out of the business. And I would rather be in a place where you have to be good at what you do to be a player. And ultimately what will happen is those people that do survive, they'll end up working together, and they're going to realize that there's so much business that they're not really competing with each other. Moreover, they're working with each other to serve the market. And that's where I would rather be, versus one of the, in a vertical state where you have to be a master of everything.
What about you, Francesca? Is there one market that's more attractive to you? And I'm not limiting your funds or your business option. You can be a dispensary, you can be a grow operation.
Oh, whoa.
Ooh,
New spin.
I like
I have to throw some new spin on here.
Yeah.
I do like my ego likes the idea of, if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. So there's something kind of attractive, and New York has so many micro identities in their boroughs, that you could be like, I'm going to be the dispensary destination for Tribeca, or, or Brooklyn, and certain parts of Brooklyn, or something along those lines. You could do that. But there's something kind of, I love about the idea of opening up a killer dispensary in Asbury Park. That's where I think I'd actually want to be.
Oh, it would be so cool to open up a store there called Greetings from Danksbury Park.
Oh.
There's our That's interesting. You know who I bet you guys would like to hear from and his opinion on this?
I know.
I'm talking the pride of Morris County, the pride of Randolph Township, producer extraordinaire, Frankie Fifth Year. How you doing, my friend?
Hey, how you doing? How you been doing?
Take it easy. Frank, I don't think I have to ask you which market you would jump into, but which business would attract you the most if you could operate in your home state of New Jersey?
I think I would be on the growing side.
Ooh,
we are the garden state.
Yeah.
I could definitely see myself coming up with a list of different strain names
Uh-huh.
that fit my persona and my nationality. So one of them would be, well, the brand I think would be Frankie's Cutlets, right?
Nice.
So instead of nuggets, you would sell cutlets.
Absolutely.
Nugs over nuggets.
Homemade. We would have a concentrate line called Grandma's Sauce, Grandma's Gravy.
Ooh.
Yeah.
TM these things.
You got TM. This whole
TM.
episode's TM'd.
We have the Jersey Turnpike strain.
Ooh.
And then we have the jug handle.
That's
Jug handle's a good one.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Nobody, if you're not from the East Coast or haven't been through New Jersey, you're not going to know what that is.
Yeah. It means like no left turns are allowed in Jersey,
Yeah,
essentially.
it's-
So they have these huge, annoying jug handles that you have to go through to ever make a left.
Does anybody like it? Frank, you're from New Jersey. Do people from New Jersey like the jug handles, or do you hate them as much as out-of-staters hate them?
I don't mind it as much.
Yes, you grew up with it. So
Yeah, I grew up. I never really, well, now being in Delaware, but I've never really experienced that.
Hey, I got to make a right to make a left.
Yeah.
It's like so crazy.
Yeah.
I thought those things were just put in place for out-of-staters. It's like getting us back for all the chemical, soot we sent your way from DuPont. I thought it was Jersey getting back at us. Frank's bringing up something interesting. Is there a particular strain name or business name that you want to see emerge from these two markets, guys? I'm going to
This
throw
is
that
heavy.
out to you.
I love it. I love this question.
Mike, you want to go first?
I've got a couple that I wrote down. I'll be honest. I anticipated this one coming around. So I thought there's like some significant sports legends that have come out of New York.
Bring them at
Like
me.
you, instead of like Mr. October, you could do Mr. Croptober.
Ooh, nice. A little Reggie Jackson action.
I think you would have to reference the Jersey Devil too. And for
Yeah.
those of you who don't know, the New Jersey Devils isn't just the hockey team. The Jersey Devil is a mythical creature that lives in the Pine Barrens, similar to the place that was visited by Christopher Moltisanti and Paulie Walnuts in The Sopranos. But the Jersey Devil is
episode. For
Yeah.
sure.
So, but the Jersey Devil would be a good one. I think you could go with some stuff like Five Family Express, maybe like Big Apple Cake, different
Nice.
things like that as well. I think you could have a shit ton of fun coming up with New Jersey, New York strain names though.
Outstanding. I figured I love that. And you know what? We were on the same thing. I just took one of the old cannabis monikers and I had the Jersey Devil's lettuce. So I thought that'd be just a great
That's
strain.
good.
That's a great one.
That's a good
That's
one.
a good the lettuce.
I'll save mine. Francesca, is there a product that you want to see emerge from these two fantastic states?
In my dispensary, greetings from Danksbury Park, I would definitely have Boss Buds
Sweet.
as like a
Mhm.
whole line
Yeah,
of
that's strong.
flour.
Yeah.
I think that you gotta have, forget about it, some real Jersey kind of sayings in there.
Yeah.
There was one that I thought of that I'm now completely blanking on because everybody else's was so good. I'm joking. I'll come up with it as we're signing off. I'll just shout it into the void.
I wanted to see in Jersey, I wanted to have a dispensary called the Bada Bong Club.
Bada bong, solid.
That's good.
Where they had a strain that I ripped off the toughest SOB. I want the Rocco DeMeo's coat strain or jacket. It's the
The
jacket.
jacket.
But I would like to see it come out of New York. I would like Madison Square Munchies to come out of somewhere, some edible line.
Yeah.
And then I have my strain name that I want to see come out, guys. So you ready for this?
Drum roll.
It's from the Cosmo Kramer Cannabis Company. And the strain name is the Lloyd Braun because it's serenity at first, insanity later. The Lloyd Braun strain, ladies and gentlemen.
That's brilliant.
That's tough to beat. That's why
That
I
is.
know why Nick wanted to back cleanup on this one.
Yeah. Forget about my names.
Guys, I had so much fun tossing this one around with you today. Thank you so much for joining and thank you for the work you put into it. I think that we're going to see some interesting stuff in the next year and a half, huh?
Yep, this will be fun to watch.
It'll be cool to see how New York does change now that their rec market isn't going to be vertical, so that changes the whole freaking game for them, and they get competitive with Jersey. But pricing, like they've got so much to see unfold. Yeah.
Train rides are going to be a lot more fun from now on,
Oh,
making
God.
stops here and there from where we take the train. Thank you for joining us once again here on Infused. Thanks a ton to our producer extraordinaire, Frankie Fifth Year. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to Infused. We certainly appreciate it, guys. Until next time, we'll see you from Delaware. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.